Virgo energy I think it is probably one of the most complex of all as well, because it is so service oriented, but it also has a great deal to do with tending to humanity's soul as well. And then you have like Beyonce, who is considered a control freak by many because the perfection, right? She wants to express the beauty of what she feels on the inside in such a detailed manner. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between Virgo and, again, that Gemini, is that we have detail and then we have superfluous.
That's so interesting that you point out that in reference to Beyonce, because when we generated these from ChatGPT, for Beyonce, it says, Virgos are known for their attention to detail and perfectionism, traits that are evident in Beyonce's meticulous approach to her music and performances.
Yeah.
So you just said it perfectly.
Right. And she embodies that.
Welcome back to the Medicin Podcast. This is Mimi, and I got my love Chase next to me. This is part 2 of a 4-part astrology series. If you haven't yet listened to part 1, we encourage you to go back and listen to that episode first. This episode will still make sense, of course, but if you want the full experience with us and our mentor friend, Adrienne Abeyta, I definitely encourage you to go back and listen. It provides a lot of context and foundation for what we talk about in these next 3 episodes.
Episode 1 was a reintroduction to astrology and a general recap of some of the main components of astrology to set us up for these next few episodes. Today's of which, if you are born from March 21st through September 22nd, you will definitely want to pay attention. Or if you know somebody who's born in that time frame, this will be wildly valuable. This is the first 6 signs of the Zodiac that we'll be walking through today, and you will absolutely love it. And then stay tuned for next week and the week after, because we are going to continue this series through episodes 3 and 4. Guys, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, we are likely in Greece right now. If you want to know what we're up to, if you want to know what we are doing, check us out on social media, _Medicin and Mimi_the Medicin. And you can find me, _Chasen _1, or just search my name, Chase Ramey.
All right, you guys, enjoy episode 2 of this 4-part astrology series.
All right, everybody, here we are, episode 2 of 4 as it pertains to our astrology series. And we are kicking it off with the first 6 signs of the Zodiac, starting with Aries. This is March 21st through April 19th. We're going to be speaking to the sun sign in this context, as I request that the listeners think about March 21st through April 19th, reflect on anybody they might know who was born in this period of time. But I will also, for each sign that we refer to, give a list of what at least ChatGPT considers to be the most famous or recognizable names that have this sun sign. So for Aries, March 21st through April 19th, we've got Lady Gaga, Robert Downey Jr., Elton John, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Mariah Carey, thinking about their personalities as we have this conversation. And now I will pass to Adrienne. Mm-hmm. Tell us about Aries.
Aries loves to be told about themselves. So let's start there. So the beginning, Aries is the first sign, which tells us that, it is the start of the zodiac. So the spring, the equinox begins with Aries. And that it is going to express some of those characteristics first. So Aries starts out with a bang. There's something big about Aries. It's fast. It wants to lead. It is the leader. It is also very much connected, or I should say concerned with movement, just straightforward movement. So Aries, and we're talking about this in terms of the sun sign, but I want us to think about this more as a spectrum of energy. So if Aries is a spectrum of energy, it means that some of its qualities are going to be expressed clearly and others may not be expressed because either they're repressed or they're hidden. So this Aries energy can be loud. Aries rules the head, and so the face. And so there's something that can be very expressive about Aries. They want to be first, and so they typically are. Think about what qualities fall under leadership. What are required out of leaders?
Well, they're pioneers of sorts. They have no problem carving a path or handling the pressure of people following them.
Confidence,
Courage, determination. I think that's...
Confidence and courage, really good. We're gonna see determination in another sign because it requires a little bit more consistency. Aries wants to come in. They're the leaders. They want to come in. They've got great ideas. They may, talk very fast. They are insightful. Things come quickly to them. And from that place, they want to be original. They want to lead in some way. So think about all of the examples that you have there. The first one that comes to mind is Lady Gaga. And I mean, I don't know much about all of these, but, a little bit about her background is, I mean, she's a pioneer, not because she just happened to be that way. She pushed herself. Like, it took a lot. And so Aries, naturally ruled by Mars, they're fighters, they're warriors. They need a challenge. Aries are going to be very bored if they don't have something that is challenging. And if they don't choose that challenge, then challenges come to them. Because what did we say? That the sun signs, this is what you're attracting in your life. So the lessons for Aries are to learn to be confident, to trust themselves. I am. That is the word associated with Aries. I am. They also are learning about their identity. Aries rules the first house. And so Aries gets the bad rap a lot of times of being arrogant, of being insensitive, of being impatient, of being bossy. And so we can see, if we just dial that spectrum back a little bit, bossy is the same thing as what?
A leader. As a boss.
Right? Delegating, assertive, expressive, and confidence is maybe also seen as arrogance. And so Aries are the ones that are embodying all of these qualities in life. And certainly Aries, because they are ruled by the planet of fight, they can sometimes trigger people. They're confrontational. And so we need Aries energy. Otherwise, we wouldn't confront anything. Aries are also daring. And so I don't know that we had any athletes on that list, but a lot of athletes.
Well, Elton John,
pretty daring.
Very daring. And it's funny because Elton John and Lady Gaga have quite a lot of similarities when you look at them as musical artists. Flamboyance and like costume almost. They want to be the original. No one has outfits like Lady Gaga. No one has outfits like Elton John.
And both of them took their music in a direction that was counter to the culture at the time, which again, the boldness of Aries is very important. Mariah Carey, you think about voice. I mean, Aries, just in terms of that, the loud, the high pitch Aries. And then there we have Mariah Carey, who I hear is also a diva, right? And so here now we have that element of, what does that even mean to be a diva? Think about that.
High maintenance, high standards.
High standards.
For themselves and others.
Yes, very good. And what else?
And have no problem being confrontational.
Yeah.
Or just like, why should I want it any other way than the way that I want it?
Insensitive, which I think is a word we mentioned already.
Right. But insensitive only means that, when they ask for something what they want, or they say what they like or what they don't like, that can be perceived as insensitive because it's all about them.
Right.
So with Aries and fire signs in general, it's all about them. And we can't make that a negative connotation in general, because that's not fair to Aries signs. However, because it's a spectrum of energy, they can make it all about themselves. So the selfishness of an Aries, this is where we start to use this operationally. In relationships with others, fire signs and Aries in particular, they often can't help but think about themselves first. And so when you're asking an Aries to see another person's point of view, you're asking them to do something that is inherently not them, right? So we don't want to fault an Aries for being what? What are the qualities that we might fault an Aries for that now we understand?
Self-centered or insensitive or just having a lack of awareness of others.
That's that's too, they can have a lot, they can have an awareness of others. Let's say that, but their awareness of themselves is first and foremost. Yeah. And so whatever awareness they have of themselves, they may project onto others. Well, I know this about myself, so you must be that way too. That doesn't bother me. Why does it bother you?
Would this apply like the individual who, let's say in the dynamic of a relationship or a friendship, makes decisions for the family as if their feeling or opinion is more valuable than others? As such, what I want for dinner is what the family's going to want for dinner, and I'm not going to consult anybody else before I make this decision. Yes,
and we're talking about a spectrum of that energy. But yes, and so we need a leader that is not going to be like, should I, shouldn't I? What is this person going to think? And is everybody? We want immediate decision making. So we need a leader that can make decisions in the moment for the greatest good.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. And this is where, we've talked about this before, and certainly Chase and I personally, where someone's strength is actually, it's on a continuum. It's like, it's not just on a linear spectrum. It's actually able to come full circle back to the point where their biggest strength also becomes their biggest weakness, or that they are inexorably linked. That someone's ability to take charge and be a leader, if it's out of balance, could also be their biggest weakness, say in relationship, or their shadow in relationship. So what would you say there as far as like biggest strength and biggest weakness? We've already kind of touched on those.
Well, I think what you said though is more important, like the parts that are not expressed. So we talked about this in the last episode. I have met several Aries whose voices sound this loud and would die if they thought that they were being selfish. But guess what? They've got a partner who is the selfishest of all, or they've got children that they have made the center of their world, and those children have entitlements now. And so you're right. You can't get away from yourself. You can't get away from these parts of yourself. And if that part is not expressed in you, then it will be projected outside of you, and you will still have to encounter it, confront it in the other. And the level of discomfort will be to the extent that it is integrated within me. So in other words, if I was an Aries, but I let everybody else push me around and I'm the doormat, the people pleaser, and everybody else is always in charge, until I step into my so-called power, my I'm imbalanced, and everybody else is wearing my Aries attire.
Got it. Got it.
Inviting us almost into that aspect of ourself that we are oppressing or suppressing or keeping quiet or dim, as like an invitation to like get in there and quit denying this aspect of yourself. Yeah. Interesting.
Misunderstood or maybe underrated aspects of this sign?
Well, I think that the softness, for one. Aries are considered to be, it's Mars. So Aries can be incredibly self-aware as well, and aware of others, and soft and comforting. And their soft and comforting may be very direct, though. You're not going to wonder about it. We talked about the selfishness, but that selfishness also, if we think about what self-love is, we want that focus on the self. Another misnomer about Aries is that they're aggressive, right? And they're not aggressive per se. They just know how. They are innately capable of being confrontational, of asserting themselves. Another Aries is a very independent sign, but it is also incredibly relational. So a lot of times people think with Aries, if you're born in Aries, it means you're meant to be alone, since Aries are, the lone wolf, so to speak. But that is not true. Okay. And Aries wants to be a leader, and a leader of something.
In this little cup, I have my favorite way to enjoy mushy love, which is in combination with cold milk. We drink raw cow's milk, and I put about 8 ounces of milk in with about a scoop and a half of mushy love. That combination, like the cold version of mushy love, tastes like liquid graham crackers. Like, I shit you not. And if you don't know yet what mushy love is, it's our mushroom elixir with 500 milligrams of chaga, which is amazing for gut support. They call it the king of mushrooms. And then 500 milligrams as well of tremella mushroom, which is the beauty mushroom. And she is most known for holding 500 times her weight in water. The more hydrated we are, the more plump and dewy and fresh and young our skin looks.
Plump and dewy.
For Mushy Love, go to getmushylove.com and you can use the code MEDICIN for a nice little discount that we only give to our Medicin Podcast listeners.
Taurus is the next sign. This is April 20th through May 20th. So I'll let everybody meditate on who they may know within that time frame. And ChatGPT's 5 most famous people, who are Taurus, Adele, George Clooney, the ever handsome George Clooney, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Stevie Wonder, and Cher.
Yeah.
Tell us about Taurus.
Wow. Okay. All right. So Taurus is our first earth sign, and it's a fixed earth sign. So where we came out of Aries in I am, we move into Taurus, which is I have. And so Taurus is security oriented. It's earth. It is the determination, the follow through from Aries. So where I stopped you and I said, okay, Aries starts, but the stubbornness and determination and perseverance is Taurus domain. So Taurus is peaceful. It's ruled by Venus. It's hardworking, and it's also incredibly lazy. So here's an example where we have both sides. I like to say that, Taurus knows how to work hard and they know how to rest hard. So that the senses are what are most enhanced in Taurus. They are very sensual beings. And so food is something that provides comfort. They need that form of comfort. Money also provides a sense of comfort and security, right? Beauty provides a sense of comfort and security. Taurus are, they don't like a lot of drama, unlike Aries, which is fire. And so Taurus want to focus on what is at hand. They're loyal, they are hardworking, they're dependable, but they're not always known for their originality. So instead, Aries starts something and Taurus is like, okay, I can help you make that happen. And so they're really good with the follow through in that way.
Like best supporting actress.
Yes. Yeah, that would be a good one too because of the beauty in that. When I think about some of the people that you have listed there, first of all, Taurus rules the throat and the voice. So here we have, the beautiful Adele. And
Stevie Wonder too, and Cher,
all of them.
Yeah.
But you look at like the kind of luxury for each of them as well, and there's a different like Adele looks very Taurus and Taurian in that she had the big voluptuousness of just what it is to be an earth goddess, and that's what we have there with that Taurus energy.
Totally. Wow. And Cher is definitely, she's always been about her body, about, again, a different type of flamboyance, and she looks expensive.
Yeah.
Cher looks expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But you can feel like her groundedness. And that Taurus is very grounded.
Yeah.
Unlike Aries, that's fire and is just like out the door before it even began. Taurus is slow moving. And we talked about this in the last one with you being a Gemini, Chase, but having Mercury in Taurus, it slows the process of thinking down to something that's thorough.
Interesting. So 2 of my best friends are both Taurus.
I think
they're double Taurus.
They're both Sun and Moon Taurus.
Now these
and
2
they're married.
played a critical role in my life. They showed up for me when my life was just a pile of crap, and were such a nutrient for where I was at 27. And one of them was they were both personal trainers. One of them continued to be my personal trainer, and I felt that his support and guidance in my life, which was obviously very helpful for me physically, but also was at that moment a slowing down and a taking inventory of a type of season of my life that was so critically important. And I'm curious, what is it about my personality, or maybe it was that window of my life that found such nutrition in having these relationships with to Taurus individuals?
Yeah. And that's a great question that leads us to, it's a more advanced question that I'll put in there. When you're looking, so you're saying like, look at this Taurus energy, how it's been drawn. Like, is there something in my chart that would be synchronistic with that? And I mean, without looking at your chart, but knowing, because we talked about it, that your Mercury, right, is in the sign of Taurus. So the way that you were thinking and putting together the structure of your world and your philosophy and your perspective was really being grounded in that time by teachers that were reflecting back, a theory that you needed to integrate in your body, right? And Taurus is not only about talking about it, it's showing you. So the physicality of Taurus is in the body, and it's in what I have. So think about that. When we're thrust out into the world, I am everything. But what do I have? I have my value, what I value. I have my body, and I have my possessions. What's mine? So Taurus can be greedy. They can be possessive. Whatever it is that they have, they really value. It's theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have as my ascendant, Taurus as my ascendant. And I feel that ever since a very young age, I've always wanted my things, whatever that was. And the first example that came into my head was when we were in elementary school, we used to have to cover our books, our textbooks. And I would make sure mine was absolutely perfect and have like something beautiful or very neat on it, where I would look at other kids and theirs would be tatty and ripped and they would be drawing all over it and craziness. And I'm like, I remember thinking, this is such a silly example, but it's back from when I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. Remember looking at other people's things and thinking, why don't they want it to look nice? Uh-huh. Or like I remember a friend of mine would draw on her jeans. Mm-hmm. She was probably a Pisces or an Aquarius or something, or maybe a Sagittarius, just like adventure and exploration. I'm going to see what this adventure is, and coloring on my own jeans. And I was aghast. I was like, how could you ever like color and taint your belongings that way? Uh-huh. It's so interesting when I think back. Like, it's such a little like weird memory in my head, but it's this stuff is like baked into you.
Well, and it captures your whole chart again beautifully. But yes, so Taurus, that Taurus energy is very concerned about their stuff. And so, their stuff, mainly the things that provide some sense of safety and security, but also they are the builders. And so it's through Taurus that we build out things. So for Taurus, again, think about that. Money is something that we're constantly building on, mm-hmm. right? Our investments, our home might be something that we are building on. Our bodies, yes. our relationships. So it's not that they don't change, even though they are considered kind of the opposite of change. It's that they take glacial changes, like very small changes.
So
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And you say the funny aspect where you're like hardworking but incredibly lazy.
Yes.
As I think of these individuals in my life, they're so ritualized and regimented, and everything is like this slow build up of healthy patterns on top of healthy patterns and rituals, and every
masters of moderation too.
Totally, but like every little piece is perfect in the house. There's a cup of for each day of the week that you consume your coffee through. Like it's so articulated and spelled out. But if they were to change or pivot into sort of a new way of being, it would be a very long evaluation process and a slow like drip into what would be, potentially a life change for them.
Totally.
And they both relax and rest very well.
Yeah.
They can easily, we've gone on vacation with them, we've gone on trips with them, we've been in relaxation mode with them, and they're not like fixated on work.
Right.
They're present and
I love being around that. Like, I absolutely love it. It just anchors me in presence. And so, big fan of the Taurus over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sounds like you might need some of it, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, so misunderstood or underrated aspects of the Taurus.
The misunderstood, I mean, that they are lazy. I mean, that's one of the qualities. And without taking that in the context of understanding that when they are working, they can be very fixated on anything that they are working on and can, do giant things. But then the laziness part of it is not lazy. It's that they also know how to relax.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That they don't like change. This is another big one. And I also should have prefaced all of this with saying that we're talking about pure energy here. And so if we're talking about a Taurus sun that's got a Sagittarius moon and we say Taurus don't like to change, and they've got a Sagittarius moon, they're going to be like, you're liars, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not that Taurus don't like to change. It's that it needs to be well thought out, strategic, and purposeful. There needs to be a reason for change. And they can be adaptable during change. They just need to have a system and a routine in place.
Got it.
Yeah.
That
Got
makes
it.
sense.
Okay. Anything else on Taurus?
Yeah, they love watches. By chance, do your friends, do they collect watches? They love like finer things in life.
There's a high class whiskey.
Oh, yeah, or
drinking
whiskey.
and collection,
Anything for
collecting,
sensing. Yeah.
And everything in their home is intentional.
Yeah.
Their interior design it could be in a magazine, and every single piece in their home either has a story or a purpose or a home in their home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 It is very purposeful. Yeah. So that, I mean, slow moving, I think it's deserving if you understand that it's not a negative thing. It's a necessary thing. So we as a collective right now would all benefit from acting like Taurus.
Totally. Great. Okay. Gemini. This is May 21st through June 20. This is my sun sign, as well as Angelina Jolie's, Johnny Depp's, Marilyn Monroe, Kanye West, and Natalie Portman. What a lineup here.
What a lineup. Yes. Well,
Tell me about myself.
Here we have Castor and Pollux, right? This is the the double-faced sign. And so I'll start off with that, that there's a misunderstanding often that Geminis are two-faced. And the negativity that's attached to that two-faced is unfair. So instead, if we take it from, the purity of two-faced, it comes from the constellation of these two brothers. But more, Gemini is a mutable sign and it's air. So now we have this excitement that's happening here, right? Air is all over the place and mutable is changeable. So we have somebody that is incredibly inquisitive and curious and wants to know about everything and wants to connect to everything and has an attention span of a flea, right? Until they are ready to expand on that.
Yeah.
Geminis are the master at synthesizing information and experiences. They will remember things that they didn't even try to remember simply because they are already primed to make connections.
I say that about Chase all the time. He remembers details of his childhood that I could never even come close to. It's like those experiences are sewn into the fabric of his being. And I try really hard to remember details of my childhood and whatever. There could be multiple things kind of in impacting that. But I'm always so impressed at how much you remember of your life.
Yeah, and life afterwards too, other people's lives and stories. My best friend Jennifer and Keith, Geminis, and I have my son is in the third house, which is Gemini. So I have this affinity toward y'all. Mm-hmm. But in part that is because Geminis are they're lively and they're great communicators, and they'll talk about anything. They're easy to converse with, and they're perceptive. And so that part of them remembering, even if they don't want to, they can't help but listen to stories.
Yeah.
Geminis are also known to be a little bit anxious, and again, this is because it's that air quality and mutable, and so they're restless. They need to be in action, and if they're not in physical action, then their minds are always in action, and so they overthink, and it can be hard for them to focus.
Yeah, this is where the strength comes full circle and can actually be expressed as like something that is impacting their life negatively.
Yeah. Yeah. But their ability to be able to relate to others is also, and they relate in an airy way. So this is to say that, in their relation, even if they talked to somebody 13 years ago that had a job like driving a forklift and now they suddenly run into somebody else, now they can relate to that person about the forklift. And so all the information that they were storing comes into connection with what they're hearing in that moment, creating a connection between those two people.
Yeah.
That's probably why you're so great at analogies, like coming up with analogies for explaining concepts where I don't necessarily feel like that's a gift of mine per se, but it seems like it just comes easily to you.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a Gemini thing, which it sounds like it could be, but it's also a way that I feel like I delve into topics at times, whether that's just through conversation, whether it's through our podcast. But I was kind of a dumb jock for most of my academic life before I kind of honed in on having a financial career, and from then on it was great, and great student and all things like that. Good job. But I missed a lot of what I consider to be like key foundational learning aspects of a diverse set of knowledge. And so
wait, stop there. That's really important. You said an important piece because Gemini is about diversity and diversification. And in the beginning of our life, so again, this is the third house. And when we move to the house system, we'll understand how this is a process of individuation. And that third part, the Gemini, so we have I am, I have, and I think. And that first beginning, the fundamental, makeup of our mindset is based on siblings and peers. And so school is a part of it, but it first becomes about those social cues. How were we socialized? And that is the underpinning of how we think in the world. Because again, remember that our minds were created before we were even verbal.
Yep. Okay.
Right. So Geminis are imprinted with this ability to relate to others. Words are a bonus, but it's just making those connections.
Got it.
And so maybe you didn't have the academia that you needed in the beginning, but you certainly had, the experience of socialization.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And you definitely weren't a dumb jock. You were an unapplied
The light hadn't
jock.
been turned on.
Yeah.
It's
developing your body.
What was important to you at the time was your friendships, your relationship with me, and your sport, your basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not. You definitely were not a dumb jock. And I know it's a kind of a flippant term that you use, but it was just like unapplied. It was like not unfocused, but like you just hadn't found anything yet besides sports and friends and me or girls, whatever, that you were interested in.
Sure.
To go deeper into.
Sure. Another thing that comes up for me a lot, and we joke about it, but I almost have this almost like an attraction, almost like a physical attraction to intellect. And somebody who is highly intelligent and articulate, I salivate over. And if I find somebody, it's like when I met you, just knowing how intellectual you were, I was like, I just want to sit and observe and listen and accumulate whatever is coming out of this woman's mouth. It's amazing. And I do that quite often. We joke, I'm almost like gay for these people because I'm like, damn, I'm like in love with this person right now. Is that a Gemini attribute?
Absolutely. Well, it is Gemini. And so, you're pining after yourself, right?
Well, that's kind of the thing is like, part of me has it where it's like, I want to know this.
Yeah, exactly.
Me.
Osmosis. You're all just spit all over me.
Yeah.
Right?
It is funny when we're listening to different podcasts like Andrew Huberman or different guests that'll be on podcasts that we watch at night. And I'll look over at him and I can just see it in his eyes that he has just this bromance towards this, middle-aged man that's just like spewing all sorts of intelligence. And it's not just intellect. It's not just the nuts and bolts, 1, 2,
Wisdom.
3 analytical. It's men especially that have a certain level of intelligence, but can also match it with emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the scientist or the researcher that you're like, oh my gosh, it's someone who can also articulate themselves in an emotionally intelligent way.
Yeah, the people who have the ability to storytell and they can speak with archetypical themes that resonate with a listener while also through those themes open the gate of their intelligence and wisdom such that like you feel like you're listening to a story, but along the way you are actually getting profound information from the story, and it's not just like a fairy tale. And I think we're getting on a little bit of a rabbit trail.
Because we're talking about Gemini, and then we would go down rabbit trails. This is perfect for Gemini, and fairy tales are very are very important for those that have eyes to see. But coming back to what you said there, like you're also like it's not only the knowledge and information, because it's information. That's what Geminis are just pining after. But it's how do I connect that information to all the other information so that I feel like I am in a web of information. And so that's what, because it is the mind, but we're going to see a greater intellect in Aquarius, the greatest intellect in Aquarius, but this curiosity, this intellect that is curious in Gemini.
Got it. Love it. Underrated attributes, misunderstandings. Anything else about Gemini that we're missing?
Yeah, I think unfortunately Geminis get assigned ADHD far too often, not understanding that if ADHD was in fact an archetype, it would probably look something like an air sign, Gemini or Aquarius. And so they, that they can't focus. They can focus. It takes effort for them to focus. I think another thing is that they are... they're spacey and they're airheads and they won't commit.
Yeah.
And that's not fair because they can, but they are the opposite of commitment. Doesn't mean that they can't commit. It means that keeping their options open is one of the ways that they are always receiving new information, right? And new experiences.
Yeah. When I was dating, when we were split up, and I didn't really know much about astrology, and you occasionally date a spiritual girl, and they're like, oh my God, Gemini, like whatever. And I'm like, what? And it was more along the lines of like not wanting to commit, not wanting to get into something serious, or having a lack of an attention span as pertains to the relationship once it moved past a novel stage.
Little did they know
that I was just had a soul contract with you.
Holding out.
Nothing was going to work. But that's something that I've often wondered about myself, knowing that Gemini has this reputation for lack of an attention span, if you will, or an inability to focus on something. And
I'm just sitting over here smiling because I'm thinking about our conversation literally yesterday as we were walking. If you remember, you were talking about just how we want to set up our life, and you were like, I want to be mobile, I want to be agile, I want to be able to move quickly,
Gemini,
and he's putting that over his entire life. He doesn't want to sink down into anything as far as like, I have to stay here. I might choose to stay here, but I want to be able to move if I want to.
Yeah. Freedom is important. The ability to be mobile or agile is super important to me.
It's because it's who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is where we're talking about those innate qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. I could keep talking about myself, but we'll move on.
All right.
All right. Next one, Cancer, June 21st through July 22nd. We've got Tom Hanks here, Princess Diana, Selena Gomez, Tom Cruise, and the soccer player Lionel Messi.
Okay. I think the Queen represents this one really good, just in the matriarchal mother that she was supposed to be. And here we have a water sign and a cardinal sign. So let's just first acknowledge that we walked through those first three cardinal signs. And now we're back into a cardinal sign, which is an indication that we have now come to one of those cross quarters. So this is the solstice, the summer solstice. Well, let's just say the solstice is marked by the sign of Cancer. Okay, and so this is a cardinal water sign. And unlike a cardinal fire sign that was all about action, action, action for the sake of action and adventure, this is going to be an initiation of emotional connections. Right. So here we have the mother archetype. We have the nurturer. We have the one that is the caretaker, the consummate, caretaker here. So there is this emotional security, the ability to provide safety, the need for comfort and safety, emotional and physical. We have here the Cancer is ruled by the moon. So we have somebody that is very intuitive and is connected to the cycles, very sensitive to their environment and to their relationships. Because remember what we said about the moon, it shows its light by reflecting the sun. And so Cancers are also excellent leaders. And of course they are, right? The mother, it's the matriarch. But they are also leaders in other ways as well. But they need to be leaders of things that they care about.
Your dad is a double Cancer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's entrepreneur, CEO, genius in his own niche of building premium homes and buildings and everything. So I'm applying that to him
call.
as we speak.
Yeah.
In something you said earlier in episode 1, you said when we were talking about Cancer, this applies to your dad perfectly. You said something like, they are loving and agreeable or something. And then you said, unless they have an opinion on something. So what was that piece on Cancers? If they feel opinionated or if they have an opinion, what is that? Do you remember what you said there?
I think, well, I can just answer that straight from that, because again, you know, the Cancers are going to be loving and supportive and compassionate, but they're cardinal signs, which means that they are leaders and their opinion is going to come from the place of protection. And so Cancers, they want to protect, and often, you know, whatever their opinion, because they do. I mean, they're bossy as well, especially of the household or whoever is theirs. If this is my responsibility, right, and that's, you know, all the people at work, suddenly that's my family. Yep. Cancers make everything into a family, and they typically want to, in some way, lead that family. And so, whereas, you know, if they don't have a good family life, then they are absolutely going to create families everywhere they go so that they can feel a part of. Cancers are also very sensitive to perceived criticism. So if Cancers just desire connection, because here we're in water, right? And what they desire is to make these close emotional bonds and connections. When they perceive that there is a threat there, like their little crab icon, they crawl back in their shells. And so Cancers can be very introverted. When they're hurt, you don't often know it, or you know it sideways. You know, crabs crawl sideways. So when Cancers are feeling a little bit crabby, they're not always direct about that. They may, you know, start crawling sideways, or they retreat.
Question.
Yep.
So when we're thinking about relationships between signs, could a Cancer have a hard time with maybe with like an Aries or a Scorpio, where they're, or is there another sign that might trigger that, like, need to go into their shell? Well,
I think Chase is a great example of that, and we talked about that earlier. You're a Gemini with a Cancer moon. Those two don't have anything in common. One's air, one's water, one's mutable, one's cardinal, one's masculine, one's feminine. And so when you were saying at the end of the day, you're exhausted, and you just want to retreat into your little shell and listen to nothing other than, you know, the sound of your own heart beating. Right. That's what they need, because it gets overwhelmed and overstimulated. So yes, I mean, this is where, you know, being in a relationship with a Cancer, if you're far more extroverted and you go, you know, if the Cancer is not in that cycle, because this is not to say the Cancers can't do that, but if that's not in their cycle for the moment, they can be big pain in the asses, complaining about everything.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah, my little sister Hope is a Cancer sun, and she is such an embodiment of the where you first started out talking about Cancer, just like nurturing and mothering, and very sensitive to their environment. And she had a very tumultuous relationship with her mother. And I won't get into details, but like I see that in her, the Cancerness, and how that probably was a really tough, who was a Scorpio, is why I ask. Her mother was a Scorpio, and you know, she spent her entire life going back into her shell because her environment was so tumultuous.
But more importantly, what you're pointing to there is that everybody that's born a Cancer can't get around dealing with the mother. And this is the mother wound, and this is motherhood, and this is mothering. And so we have to expand our perception of what mothering means to be something other than a mother and a child, but how we nurture and care for ourselves, how we nurture and care for others, how we nurture and care for our community, how we nurture and care for the world at large. Right. And so Cancers can't get away from that, which means that in their early life, they need to have lessons that help develop that quality in them. And I mean, you've got a Cancer moon, Chase. So the mother is something that is a big deal for you. And as you and Mimi go through this conception journey, it's also part of your journey. Even if it's not your body, it is your body in that it is the relationship. Sure. Right. And so the other thing that we need to also talk about Cancers, they're not sensitive little wimps either. They're fierce. And again, I think about like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, or like a mother scorned. Right. They're protective like mama bear. And so when they feel like they are they need to protect themselves, which is often they can be harsh.
Yeah, they
You
got those pinchers.
They can attack.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
Okay.
One
Yeah,
other thing I
feel
want to
that.
say that things people don't know about Cancers also, they're actually really good at business. Because they're ruled by the moon, they understand cycles.
Sure.
And so again, this isn't logical. They didn't go to business school. It could be refined that way. They just have a sense.
That's such a perfect depiction of your dad.
Totally.
He didn't go to school, doesn't have a college education, but he was wildly successful because of his intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he understands
And
the
his
rhythms,
support,
the
his
rhythms
support.
There.
of business, and that there's life cycles to businesses or projects, and that there's initiation, there's growth, and there's plateau or satiated point of the business, and then it declines, and then it's all over again. And so I think that could be definitely understood by a Cancer.
Well,
very
and that describes, I mean, there's life right there,
Yeah,
right? It's all
right.
depicted by these rhythms and these cycles. But what's really beautiful in that I just realized is that you picked up the torch and went to school to refine through the mind
Wow.
in the way that he didn't need to. He stuck to, the raw material of
Yeah.
instinct, and you're refining through the mind.
Wow. I've never thought about that. That is great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. Anything else on Cancer?
Oh, they love the home. They need to be near the home.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
they're homebodies.
Yeah.
Everything around home they love. Even if they carry their home on their back. I mean, I have lots of people that are nomads that are like,
Okay.
no, I don't care. But yes, they do. They carry their home on their back. So
No, that's fascinating. My parents in their post-retirement, they have traveled, and my dad is at this phase now where he wants to set up shop. Let's get a winter home and set up shop.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, let's live out of a suitcase.
He
And
he
that
doesn't
has
want
been
to.
a bit of a conflict. So that is very applicable.
yeah.
Okay, Leo, July 23rd through August 22nd. Besides our very own,
I'm smack dab in the middle at August 7th.
we've got Barack Obama, V. Madonna, Jennifer Lawrence, Chris Hemsworth, and Coco Chanel. Tell us about Leos.
Well, J-Lo's a Leo too.
Oh, and J-Lo.
And since we
All
got
right.
the other Jennifer there.
Yeah.
Oh, Leos. Leos are ruled by the sun and they are a fixed sign. And so Leos shine. They are life itself. And, thinking of going back to what I said, the most important luminaries are the moon and the sun. And so Cancers and Leos, they are the celestial parents, if you will. The king and the queen, in any way that we want to see this. But Leos shine. They are about expression, self-expression. They are warm and loyal and stubborn. Again, it's a fixed sign. So their beliefs and, what they come to know as as best. I don't want to say truth and I don't want to say right, but what is best for them and others, they hold on to and they build from that place. Leos are also, they're traditional and they're responsible. And so they want to uphold what is, again, best for the whole. They lead with love and light. And so that need for others to not just be happy, but be joyful, because Leo is the divine child. And for them, living your best life is also recognizing that we've got one life here on this grand stage. So the grand performance of it all is to experience and embody as much as you possibly can. And whereas we'll hear another fire sign, Sagittarius, that simply wants to, experience for the sake of experience and wisdom, Leo wants to experience so they know what it feels like to be.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
What's coming up for you, babe?
I mean, I've said this before and earlier today, but when I read or learn about the attributes of Leo, it so resonates so deeply within me. There's some people that can read about themselves or read about their sign and they're like, that doesn't really resonate. I've never felt that. I've always felt like, yep. And yeah, and we've talked a little bit more about the different aspects of my chart that kind of give extra flavor to the Leo-ness, whether it's the heavy Virgo in my chart or Libra. It kind of focuses that Leo energy towards different things, but the expression is so it is the most resonant for me. The sickest I've been, the lowest I've been, the worst I've ever felt in my life was when I didn't feel like I was expressing myself in the best way and in the truest way and in just in a way that was reflective of what I felt on the inside, what was coming out of me when we were going through our marriage issues and when we were separated. That expression of me where to other people looking at me, they might think that I had it all together, but I felt so bad. And it was because what was being expressed was at odds with what I felt and what I knew on the inside. And that was really a conflict for me. I felt sick. I felt gross. I felt like I was not I was not living the way I was meant to. And I think where Chase and I, came back together, the reason why part 2 is even an option was because I started to step into that Leo-ness, or the aspect of me that was reflective of what my inner world was how it truly was.
Yeah.
And so, we think about that moment where we're standing outside at Disneyland and you're looking into my eyes and you're searching for the girl or the aspect of me that you fell in love with. And like, is that there? That was there, and that was being expressed in that moment. And that's why part 2 is even an option for us, was because I was like, no, damn it. I am going to live in a reflective way of what I know to be true on the inside.
Right. And I think that's where, what you're saying is so reflective of, Leo, they have this need to be authentic, right?
Yes.
It's authentic. And that is such a word that everybody throws around, right? They want to be authentic. And authenticity doesn't have a criteria that is only beautiful and sunny. Authentic is the alignment of, am I reflecting on the outside what I feel on the inside? But in order to do that, and to do that in a way that feels authentic, not is authentic, we have to have the confidence and the self-acceptance that anything we feel, we can be an embodiment to, and it's not the best and the worst.
Right. And that anything I feel doesn't make me good or bad.
No.
It just is.
It's an expression of the human condition.
Right. And so growing up like we did, where there was a lot of shame and there was a lot of judgment around everything really in the Christian church, I grew up thinking that these different aspects of me were bad or that shouldn't be there. Rather, like, coming into adulthood and individuation is like, no, it lives in there. It is there. And I don't have to express it if it doesn't feel true, or if it doesn't, but just not demonizing it and pointing the finger and feeling shame about it.
Well, and we said that Leo is love, and so Leo is also self-love at its core. And when Leo loves itself, so going back to, some of these things that Leo gets accused of, center of attention. I think that, almost unequivocally, that astrology's demise is probably because Leo gets this negative attachment that it wants to be the center of attention, rather than the sun is the center of the universe. So even if they don't want to be the center of attention, they are. They need to be the center of their own attention first and foremost, because the love that they give, which is so much, is first sourced out of the love that they give themselves. Right.
Yeah, that's been one of my greatest lessons.
That's been, two of the things that attract me to you the most, and especially in part 2, has been the clear evidence of your abundant self-love and your authenticity. Two of the things that caused friction when we were married, and the marriage ultimately led to, deterioration, was the fact that I was triggered by the inauthentic version that you were interested in becoming, in my opinion, at that time. So we, instead of sort of like
performing,
right, instead of authentically representing this sort of inner light and showcasing it from a stage, I was, and I'm using this language now, I didn't know how I felt back then, but I felt a rub because it was almost like a co-opted idea of what we should be doing as a unit, or at you as an individual, that was then being expressed as if that was who you are. And I just kept saying to myself, like, that's not us. that's not you.
But I think you bring up a really good point, and that Leos are under the pressure to express what everybody else, what the common good is. Their opposites, Aquarius, are going to be the ones that are unconventional and will break out of that traditional. So Leos are under a lot of pressure to be beautiful, to be glamorous. Like, notice that all the people that we are calling up are famous people. Right. So Leos have that pressure that they have to be in some way famous because they have to uphold the glamour of what it means to be fill in the blank.
Sure.
Right. Which is why they, are the performers, which is why they suffer from the complex of feeling like they are inauthentic. What's the word I'm thinking of?
Imposter syndrome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome is very, very real.
It's part of being a Leo.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Okay. Any closing comments on Leo?
I think we covered the underrated or misunderstood aspects. I like being a Leo.
Yeah, I like you being a Leo too. It's in balance, like all of these, but for whatever reason, in balance, I'm just so attracted to you.
The most everybody is. That's the thing, right? We need the sun. And so we all look up to Leos. And that's why, Leo represents the famous person, the one that shines the brightest.
Totally.
Interesting.
All right, moving on to Virgo, August 23rd through September 22nd, our very own Adrienne, as well as...
Tell us about yourself.
Beyonce.
Yes.
Michael Jackson. Keanu Reeves. Zendaya, which I think is like a...
She's an actress.
She's an actress. Yeah.
She was in Euphoria.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And then Mother Teresa. So I'm excited to learn about Virgos.
Me too. Okay. So Virgos are the sixth sign of the Zodiac that'll complete this rotation. And Virgo is our next mutable and earth sign. So Virgo is, let me go back to I am, I have, I think, I feel, which was Cancer. I express. And Virgo is either I do or I serve. And so Virgo is about service. Virgo is the sign similar to Cancer in that it wants to serve, it wants to nurture, but it's not so much about being a mother to an individual as much as it is serving a condition, a cause, an environment. Virgos are analytical. Virgos are sensitive. They are trying to figure shit out all the time. And here's where it's an interesting subtlety. So Virgos are ruled by the planet Mercury, which, if we remember, is the mind. But Virgo is an earth sign. And so when it's trying to figure things out, it is, of course, in its mind, but it's more feeling things. It's very body sensitive. And so it figures out through the digestion. It figures out through intuition. So Virgos are also very sensitive to their environment. They're trying to understand how things fit together. They're service oriented. And most importantly, Virgos want to feel useful. Virgos are a little bit reserved, so they're shyer. See, they're following Leo, right? Leo took the stage, and now Virgo's like, all right, how do I have to clean up after Leo?
Okay, yeah.
And so that cleaning up after is also paying attention to the subtleties. Virgo is very much about behavior. How do I act? What do I do? How do I work? What are my rituals? What are my structures so that I can efficiently help and aid others? So you can feel like Virgos are naturally they're teachers, naturally they're service providers, naturally they fall into health and well-being because they're always thinking about how to improve things. A misnomer of Virgo is that they're perfectionists.
I was gonna ask that.
And I am a Virgo, so I'll say I don't think it's perfectionism that we're after. That's more idealistic, and we'll give that to Aquarians who are more concerned with perfection. Virgos are considered with the process, and is this right? Is this correct? The feedback that I seek is, was that right? Was that correct? Do you understand? Did you get it? Does it make sense? Is it applicable? So it's not a perfection as much as it's trying to reach something that is practical.
Got it. Does this fit? Is that a good question?
Yeah. Does this fit? Right. And then the next one is, how is it useful? So again, Virgos and Geminis are ruled by the same planet, but Gemini is an air sign. So it's very happy just collecting information for the sake of information, where Virgos might be collecting little tchotchkes and little items and every little diet and every little book that it possibly can, only if it's useful.
You said Virgos and Geminis are ruled by the same planet, which is Mercury. Yeah. Okay.
One of the attributes that I love about you is that aspect of, is this useful? Do you get it? Does this fit? Because that's what I want to do, is I want to be able to, I want all the information, but I want to be able to exfoliate what I don't need right now. And I want to be able to have a takeaway or something that I can, bite for this moment and do something with it.
Yes.
And in your teaching, I have so appreciated that ability to then hone in on what is like actionable right now, so that we're not just like mentally masturbating.
Totally. And that's, where, again, Virgo is associated with the 6th house, which is the house of work. And so Virgos want to know, what is it that needs to be done right now so that I can do something that will be useful for the efficiency of both knowledge and behavior. That's the important piece there, is that Virgos are, they're more moving from a place of doing. I think I gave you this example before. Keith was a Gemini, I a Virgo. He wake up in the morning and have to read every single paper. I wake up in the morning, I want to clean and tidy the house. So there's a physical component, and then there's a mental component that we'll see in Gemini and Virgo. So the other things you need to know about Virgo, and here we go, exposing myself. We are incredibly critical. We criticize. Like we might as well say, I criticize. Right, Mimi?
Self or others?
Everything. Because part of criticizing, part of being critical is analyzing. It's getting to the pieces. It's not just accepting something as is. It's needing to understand the intricacies that make up the piece that we are going to put into our mouth. Well, what is in this? What kind of ingredients? Is it sourced? When was it made? HMO friendly? All of those things. Virgos are like, we're nitpicky. We pick out all the little tiny things, but that's because we want to understand the whole.
You can't decide if something is right without cutting away what doesn't work. So it's part of the process. Or even knowing
what it's made up of. Right. And then criticizing it is that we're so sensitive to the things that are wrong, that don't fit, that we need to shave them off, but first we have to name them. I don't really like when you do that. Why do you always? Have you ever thought about why not do this? And I think Virgos love to point out all the things that need to be fixed.
And that's, I think that that aspect of you is helpful when you're in a teaching capacity, and you can have you have a Cancer moon, you said, right? Yeah. No.
Sagittarius moon.
But your
Cancer rising,
your Virgo-ness in that aspect of being a teacher, where, we'll be in a session with you, and you'll just come out with a blunt question like, well, why do you do it that way? Or what do you think? Or do you think that, and it can feel cutting, but as the student or the client in that moment, that it's necessary for your process, for your personal process. And so it's like some of the harshness is actually taken away because you know how to apply it, and you're not just criticizing just to criticize. It's for a point. And you feel that as your students and as your clients, that she's not just criticizing me to be mean. She's criticizing me or criticizing my process or the way that I think or do or whatever.
Asking you to think critically about your own process.
Yes.
Just everybody that's listening, I promise you I'm not going to criticize you when you come in. I promise.
No, and I know when we explain you, it sounds harsh, but it's really not. It's really...
And it's, Virgo gets the rap of being, it's black and white. It just is.
Paul Check is he's a Virgo, and he has that Virgo-ness, and we're attracted to that as well.
And Paul, and you just did this 2 weeks ago when we were with you for me, I might come in with this, let's just use the analogy of this balloon of overthinking. And I come in and I even just start talking about everything that's blown up this balloon. And you just come in and go, pop. And you're like, what's actually important with all the things that you're saying? Let's just pop this balloon. And to me, it feels like relief. So even though it's quote unquote critical of the thought processes that I've been having, you relieve me of the excess of my thinking so that we can get to the point.
Can you write that on my website? I will relieve everybody of the excess of their thinking by getting to the fucking point.
Yeah. So it's almost like I'll have started to talk in excess, and it's almost just like, boop. Let's get, what do you actually
it's a superpower.
Well, but Virgo is about the purification. It's breaking everything down to the pure form of it. So, Geminis want to talk about stuff, and Virgos, like, what I do really well for other people is I reflect back what you mean. You might have just said this, but I'm going to tell you what you mean because I'm listening and I'm watching and I understand. And so Virgos are really about this kind of purity. I found myself this weekend, my sister came over, which was a treat. We don't get to spend a lot of time together. And I was trying to be on my best behavior because I was an older sister and I'm still making up for that. But I found myself, and she experiences me as being critical. She's an Aquarius. We butt heads, perfectionists. But I couldn't knock it out of my mouth. I kept saying, like, first I offered her something that was food. And I was like, something, it's a Pop-Tart. And I was like, no, but it's a real Pop-Tart. And she looked at me like, what do you mean? And I was like, it's not out of a box. It's from the farmer's market. Like, this is made out of real ingredients. Then later on, it was like, do you want some water? No, this is real water. I have an osmosis machine. Do you want a blanket? No, this is real. And I was so annoyed at myself. Like, Adrienne, why do you keep saying real? But I realized that for me, it is about breaking it down to what is the essence. And when we can get to the essence, then we can build back up.
Yep.
That's one thing I appreciate so much about you, because I can get caught up in the feels that I have inside of me and not be, in my mind, not be able to articulate as concisely as I sometimes wish I could. And I'm processing through feels, and you're sitting there observing me and listening to me speak for 5 minutes or whatever about my process, about my experience. And you can distill it down, that 5 minutes, into one sentence. And I'm like, yes, fucking perfect. Why can't I do that for myself? And then sometimes I judge myself that I can't do what you just did for myself.
Well, you're a Leo and I'm a Virgo.
I know.
And even though you've got all the Leo constituents, you're still a Leo, so it's going to be big and dramatic. Like whatever it is you're going through, it needs to be all of that, because you do need the feels. And the thing about Virgo is it's not that we're insensitive, which is a misnomer. Virgos are often accused of being insensitive, robotic. And it's not that. It's just that we know how to harness, and let me say, a healthy Virgo knows how to harness their emotions in their body and not be overcome by them, but knows how to speak from them. Right? And so you don't see this in yourself, but you do all the things that you just accused me of really, really well. But you're still a Leo doing it. Right? And so watching a Virgo do the things that you want to do really well, you're just in amazement of the thing that you want, but you aren't. Right? So that Virgo energy is, I think it is probably one of the most complex of all as well, because it is so service oriented, but it also has a great deal to do with tending to humanity's soul as well. So we hear Mother Teresa in that, right? And Mother Teresa was not a very sweet person. Right. She was a tough little cookie in that. You know what she went through to serve the whole. And she didn't give a shit what she had to do to serve that whole. Right? And then you have like Beyonce, who is considered a control freak by many because the perfection, right? She wants to express the beauty of what she feels on the inside in such a detailed manner. And that's the difference between Virgo and, again, that Gemini, is that we have detail and then we have superfluous.
That's so interesting that you point out that in reference to Beyonce, because when we generated these from ChatGPT, for Beyonce, it says, Virgos are known for their attention to detail and perfectionism, traits that are evident in Beyonce's meticulous approach to her music and performances. Yeah. So you just said it perfectly.
Right. And she embodies that.
Cool. One thing that comes up for me that I observe in you and others that I know who are a Virgo is finding relationships with, making connections with subject matters or ideas that at the surface level don't seem to have a connection, but you're able to sort of see through them and articulate where they may have some level of connection or relationship.
That's really good. Thank you for saying that. I've not thought about that, but you just sparked something in me that has been emerging, which is embodiment. And I think that it's that Geminis will speak about something that they just heard 2 minutes ago.
Yep.
And if they're good at it, they could sound, I mean, Keith was, he could sound like an expert.
This is my Achilles heel.
Yeah. And
I'll be like, wait, no, stop asking me questions. That's all I know.
but they can continue. Where Virgos, they will have studied something for quite some time, but they won't speak about it until they embody it, until they feel it, until they become it. And remember, it's an earth sign. And so they have to play around with the idea until it's theirs.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we close out this episode, I definitely want to speak to the cusp, like when there's just for the listeners, if your birthday is on let's see, July 24th, you're technically a Leo, but you might also identify quite a bit with some of the Cancer traits. And that's just an example. So can you speak about the cusps a little bit?
Let's speak about the cusp, because it's also something that is misunderstood. So first of all, the cusp defines when that time starts, when the beginning of a sign starts. Now, there's something that's more advanced I won't go into called the precession of the equinoxes, which also changes that. So I think it was a couple of years ago, Virgo started on a different day. So that cusp is flexible by about 1 or 2 days. How it relates to us individual when we are born on the cusp, my rule of thumb, and other astrologers may disagree, but my rule of thumb is that when you're on the cusp of the end of a sign, so 29 degrees or 30 degrees of one sign, you are going to be more likely to take on the qualities of the sign after you versus if you're at the very beginning of a sign reaching back behind you.
Got it. Okay.
Right? And that cusp is literally like 1 day. If you're born 3 days into the sign, you're not on the cusp. If you're born 3 days or 2 days before the sign, you're not on the cusp. The cusp is very, very specific with about a 1 to 2 day ratio. Now, let me just say one other thing related to that. Remember I said to you in the last episode that Mercury never travels that far from the sun? Mercury is very likely to either be in the sign you're born in, as I said, or the sign before or after. So now you might be a Leo, but your Mercury could be in the sign of Virgo, or it could be in the sign of Gemini. So won't that give the hint then that you're cusp-like, because you're drawing from characteristics from the sign before you and the sign after you? So all of this to say that we don't want to focus too much on the cusp as being something that is bigger than the fact that you're just that sign and you have a moon sign and other planets and other signs as well.
Right.
People give way too much attention to the cusp is what I'm saying.
Okay. That's good to know.
That is good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that is the first 6 signs of the Zodiac. We are wrapping up episode 2. If you want to hang with us, be on the lookout for next Monday's episode. We'll be going through 7 through 12 as part 3 of our 4-part series on astrology, and we will see you there.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.